the next topic that we have here is inequalities. Okay, so you're often tested on inequalities on SAT as well. Now, they are going to be dealt with similar to how we deal with equations, right? जिस तरह equation solve करते हैं उसी तरह आप inequality solve करते हैं. The only difference is that you need to remember to reverse the sign. Reverse the inequality sign whenever you multiply or divide by a negative number. Okay? So for instance, if you have 3x plus 5 less than 4x plus 4, if you take the x terms to the left side, 4x comes here and becomes minus x. 5 goes to the other side, it becomes minus 1. So you have minus x less than minus 1, right? If you want to make this positive x, what do you do for that? You multiply the whole inequality by negative 1. And when you do that, you get x on the left side, 1 on the right side, but the inequality sign is also going to reverse. It was less than earlier, now it becomes greater than. Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to reverse the sign, right? All of you know this, right? If you have something like this, if you have 2x less than minus 5, when you divide by 2 now, what happens to the inequality? Sign remains the same. It becomes minus 5 over 2. We have a negative number here. Isn't the sign going to change? No. The sign only changes because when you multiply or divide by a negative number. If a negative number just exists there, uski wajah se aapne nahi change karna. Minus 5 was already on the right side. We were not dividing by minus 5. We were dividing by 2. That's a positive number. The sign does not change because of that. Is that okay? Now you could have greater than signs here, less than signs here, greater than equal to signs here, less than equal to signs here. These are the 4 possibilities that you have. This property remains the same for all of them. Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative number, the sign reverses. Now, inequalities are often going to be represented in the form of graphs. Okay, you will have graphical representation of inequalities given in the question options sometimes as well. Sometimes you can use graphical representation to solve inequalities as well. Let's understand how this is going to be done. For instance, let's say you have this inequality y greater than minus x minus 1. How do you represent this inequality on a graph? You treat this as an equation. You think of this equation, y equals minus x minus 1. Can you draw the graph of this equation? It's a straight line, right? You can adjust into any value of x, that will be the corresponding value for y. You take 2 sets of points, join them, you get a line. This is the line that you get from that. Okay? Now the inequality is y greater than minus x minus 1. What does that mean? The part above the line is what is going to satisfy this inequality. So you shade the part that is above the line like this. Is that okay? Now, since this sign was a strict inequality, as in it was just greater than and not greater than or equal to, the line that you have here is a dotted line. If you had greater than or equal to here, that means the points on the line are also going to be valid. They're also going to satisfy the inequality. In that case, you would make this a solid line like this. Okay? When you have an equal to sign, you make a solid line. Otherwise, you make a dotted line like this. All right? Now, let's have a look at this example. Let's say you have this inequality and they say which of these points is a solution to this inequality. Now, how do you think of this question? How do you approach this? Y is less than or equal to 3x minus 8. Which of these points is going to satisfy this inequality? Now, one idea is to just input those points and see which one satisfies, right? That's probably the quickest way of doing this. Just input those points. If you input minus 3 and minus 3, what do you get from that? Minus 3 less than or equal to 3 into minus 3 minus 8, and that gives you minus 3 less than or equal to minus 17. Is that true? Is that true? No, right? This is not correct. Okay. Then try 3 next. On the left side, you would have 3 in this case, and you get 3 less than or equal to minus 17. Is that true? Still not true. So A and B are both incorrect. You try C, that's 3 and minus 3. So you have 3 on the right side now, and minus 3 on the left side. So you have minus 3 less than or equal to 1. Is that correct? This is correct. So C is correct. Just to confirm, you can try the last one as well. And that's going to give you 3 less than or equal to 1, which is incorrect. So that means C is the answer. Okay. So in problems like these, you just input the options and see which one of those satisfies the inequality. Is that all right? No problems? Now, this is one way to approach such problems. There's another idea as well. And that is that you could use Desmos. What's the inequality? Y less than or equal to 3x minus 8. You can actually input that inequality as it is in Desmos as well. It will shade the correct region for you as well. Let's try doing that. Y less than or equal to 3x minus 8. This is the inequality that we have. The shaded part is what satisfies the inequality. Is that all right? Now think of those options that you have. Minus 3, minus 3, minus 3, 3, 3 minus 3, 3, 3. Okay? Just look at this graph and see which one of those points is in the shaded region. Minus 3, where is that going to be? Minus 3 is going to be on the left side. So somewhere around, let me actually make it slightly bigger. Okay. Minus 3 is going to be here. That is not in the region. Minus 3 is here. That's also not in the region. 3 is here. That's also not in the region. 3 minus 3 is here. That is what is in the shaded region. So that's your answer. Okay. So this could be an alternative. In this case, it might not be as efficient because आप input करके जल्दी निकाल सकते, but this is going to be helpful in some cases. So you need to know that you can draw inequalities, you can graph inequalities using Desmos like this as well. Is that okay? Sure. Let's look at another example now. Sometimes you have compound inequalities. Compound inequalities means something like this. You have two inequalities in a single line, right? It's a combined inequality or a compound inequality. This means x is between minus 2 and 1. How do you solve inequalities like these? 2x plus 3 minus 2x plus 3, that's greater than minus 7 and that's less than 15. How do you solve this? Whenever you apply an operation, you have to apply that on each of the three parts of this inequality. Okay? You want to make x the subject. How can you do that? Subtract 3 from all of them, right? ये plus 3 खत्म करने के लिए, you can subtract 3. Let's do minus 3 from all of them first. Minus 7 minus 3 is less than 2x, which is less than 15 minus 3. Minus 10 is less than minus 2x, which is less than 12. What do we do now? Divide the whole inequality by minus 2. Minus 10 over minus 2. 12 over minus 2. What happens to the signs? They reverse because you're dividing by negative numbers. So it becomes greater than like this. In trigonometry, yes. That's correct. Okay, so this is going to be 5 greater than x, which is greater than minus 6. So x is between minus 6 and 5. Which of these options matches this? This is actually equivalent to -6 less than x, which is less than 5. Normally, we write such inequalities in this form with smaller number on the left side, larger number on the right side. This is the standard way of writing this. These two are equivalent, right? X is between -6 and 5. So what's the answer then? C. Is that all right? So you should be able to deal with these compound inequalities like this as well. No problems? Okay. Then you sometimes have systems of inequalities. Just like we had systems of equations, that means multiple equations in which we could solve simultaneously. You could have multiple inequalities as well, which you can solve simultaneously. So you have y less than -x plus 4 and y greater than half x minus 3. If you had to represent this graphically, you do it the same way as before. Treat them as equations. Draw these two lines, right? And then the region that overlaps is the solution. Is that okay? Now you don't have to do it manually. Just put it on Desmos. Y less than -x plus 4. Let's try that. So this is y less than -x plus 4. This is the first inequality. Okay. What's the other one? Y greater than half x minus 3. Y is greater than 0.5x minus 3. All right. So you have one green region, one blue region. What's the overlapping part? This is the overlapping part. Make sense? I could try another color. This is the overlapping part. This is the solution to that system of equations. Is that okay? Any problem here? No? So you may have to solve systems of inequalities like this sometimes as well. So that's the shaded part. You can see here as well, this part. Since it's a strict inequality, you could draw that dotted here, right? If it was with an equal to sign, then you could use solid lines. No problems? Yeah. Let's try this example now. Which point is the solution to the given system of inequalities in the xy plane? Yx is less than or equal to 1. Y is greater than or equal to -2x plus 1. Now you could use Desmos for this if you wanted. How do you do this directly? X is less than or equal to 1. This is a simple example because you just have a condition on x here directly. X is less than or equal to 1. Can you eliminate some choices just by looking at that? C and D are not possible, right? Because in both of them, x is greater than 1. C and D are eliminated. Now you just need to check if the other 2 points satisfy the second inequality. Let's try -2, 3. Second inequality में input करें इसको -2 and 3. 3 is greater than or equal to -2 into -2 plus 1. That's 3 greater than or equal to 5, which is incorrect. So A is also incorrect. That means B is going to be correct. You can just verify that if you want. 4 is greater than or equal to -2 into -1 plus 1. 4 greater than or equal to 3. That is correct. So it's B. Alternatively, you could plot this on Desmos and see which of those points is in the shaded region. Okay? Is in the overlapping part of the two shaded regions. No problems? Okay, let's try this one now. Take a minute, everyone, and try this. How do we think about this? What's the solution? A, B, C, C. Okay. So it says the point 5y is a solution. That means we know that the x value is 5. Okay. So for all of them, you'll try x equal to 5. Which of the following could be the value of y? Is 18 possible? No. We can just eliminate that directly because y is supposed to be less than or equal to 17. So 18 is not possible. For the rest of the 3 points, you'll have to check, input them in this inequality. Now, a quick way of doing that would be, you know what the value of x is. So rather than inputting all of those points, you know what x is. So you can just do this. 3x minus 2y is less than or equal to minus 10. Put x equal to 5 here because x to आपको पता है क्या है. So 3 into 5 minus 2y, that's less than or equal to minus 10. Minus 2y is less than or equal to minus 25. Divide by minus 2. Sign will change. So it's y greater than or equal to 12.5. So y has to be greater than or equal to 12.5. Which option satisfies that condition? C. So that's our answer. Okay. Or you could put those points one by one in that inequality as well. And only C will satisfy, the other two will not. Is that okay? All right, let's move on. Sometimes you have inequality problems involving word problems involving inequalities. Now, how would you approach this? Take a minute, read the question statement, and then we'll see how to do that. So we approach this the same way as we approach equations, right? But instead of an equation, we will have an inequality sign there. No more than 400 grams of sugar. What does that mean? Total is equal to 400? Equal to 400? Greater than? Less than or equal to, because it's no more than 400. That means, is allowed? 400 is allowed. Is less than 400 allowed? Yes, less than 400 is also allowed. So sugar is going to be less than or equal to 400, the total amount of sugar. Okay. Now 5 grams of sugar are used for each chocolate chip cookie, and 7 grams are used for each shortbread cookie. Which of the following inequalities represents the possible number of chocolate chip cookies C and shortbread cookies S he could have made? Now, each chocolate chip cookie is using 5 grams of sugar. So what's the total amount of sugar used by chocolate chip cookies? 5 times C, right? And similarly for the other types of cookies, each one of them uses 7 grams, so that's 7 times C. This is the total amount of sugar used. And this amount has to be less than or equal to 400. That means it's D. Is that okay? Any problems? No more than 400. That means 400 is also possible. More than 400 is not possible. So less than equal to 400 hoga. Okay. All right. Let's have a look at this now. C is less than 400. You have less than equal to sign here, and that you don't have equal to sign. एक less than 400 है, एक less than equal to 400 है. That's the difference. Okay. All right. Let's have a look at this. So this person can work no more than 30 hours each week as a security guard. He wants to earn at least 1800 each week. Okay. So he can work no more than 30 hours, less than or equal to 30 hours each week. He wants to earn at least 1800. What does that mean? He wants more than or greater than or equal to. At least includes 1800 as well, right? It's greater than or equal to 1800. Working X regular hours and Y overtime hours. If he earns 50 per regular hour and 80 per overtime hour, which of the following inequalities represents this situation? X is the number of regular hours worked. Y is the number of overtime hours worked. The total hours he wants to work is no more than 30. One inequality can be X plus Y less than or equal to 30. Is that okay? X plus Y is the total number of hours worked. That number has to be less than or equal to 30. That means C and D are not possible. Okay, so those choices are eliminated. Now it's either A or B. Now what's the difference? Both of them have greater than or equal to 1800. Now X regular hours and regular hour are giving him $50. That means it's going to be 50 times X for the amount earned for each regular hour and 80 times Y for the amount earned for each overtime hour. This number has to be greater than or equal to 1800, so that's A. Is this all right? No problems? Okay, let's move on. What's the minimum number of logos she needs to earn at least $4,000, given that she is earning $275 for each logo? Number of logos, let's call this X. That's what you want to find out, right? The minimum number of logos. She's earning $275 for each logo that she makes. So how much is she earning in total? 275 times X, right? This number has to be at least $4,000. That means greater than or equal to 4,000. And that will give you something. 4,000 over 275, what's that? She wants to earn at least 4,000. So that means equal to or greater than 4,000. What's this number? 4,000 over 275? 14.54. What did we write down as the final answer? 15. We're talking about number of logos. That cannot be in decimals. Okay, so the final answer that we write here is supposed to be 15. That's the minimum value of X that we have. Right, Alina? Alina, makes sense to you? Is everything clear? Okay. Let's have a look at this now. If one tray of flatbread can be made from 8 cups of flour and 6 cups of yogurt, she needs to earn at least $4,000. At least means greater than or equal to. The total amount that she earns has to be greater than or equal to 4,000. Is that okay? Now, if we were getting X greater than or equal to 14.1, what would be our answer? If we had this? It would still be 15. Round off nahi karna. Greater than or equal to 14.1. What's the smallest number, smallest integer greater than or equal to 14.1? It's 15. It's not 14. 14 is less than 14.1. So we're not rounding off that number. Round off nahi kar rahe usko. Usse bada number dekh. Okay. All right, let's have a look at this quickly. If one tray of flatbread can be made from 8 cups of flour and 6 cups of yogurt, What's the maximum number of whole trays of flatbread that can be made from 150 cups of flour and 100 cups of yogurt? Take a minute, everyone, try to think about this. How do we make an inequality or multiple inequalities? What's the inequality going to be? Can anyone tell me the inequality or inequalities? Yes, anyone has the answer? So for one tray, you need 8 cups of flour. How many cups do you have in total? 150. Let's say the number of trays that you can make is X. Okay? 8 times X has to be less than or equal to 150. Does that make sense? Each tray requires 8 cups of flour. So 8 times X, it has to be less than 1 or equal to 150. Right? That's one condition that we have. Now, this gives you X less than or equal to 150 over 8. What's that? 150 over 8. 18.75. But that's not the only condition. We have another condition as well. And that's of yogurt. 6x has to be less than or equal to 100. From this we get x less than or equal to 16.67. This is the other condition. Now yogurt is the limiting factor. If we had more yogurt, we could make more trays of flatbread. Lekin yogurt khatam ho jayega after you're done with 16 flatbread, 16 trays of flatbread. Right? Even if you have more flour available, you can't do anything with that. Is that okay? So what's the maximum value of x that satisfies both these inequalities? How does 17 satisfy this inequality? 17 is greater than this, right? So it's 16. 16 is the maximum number that satisfies both of these conditions. Is that okay? All right, let's have a look at this. X represents the whole number of trays of flatbread you can have. Okay. Each tray requires 8 cups of flour. What's the total amount of flour used? 8 into X, right? Now the total amount that we have available is 150. So 8 times X can be no more than 150. It can be maximum 150. It has to be less than or equal to 150. This is ज़्यादा तो नहीं use कर सकते ना? That's the maximum amount available to you. And similarly, here as well, same logic. Is this all right? Okay, let's try this now. how do we think about this? The total number of paint brushes is exactly 36. There's no inequality there. This number is supposed to be 36. Now we have two types of paint brushes. Let's represent this with A and this with W. So we can say A plus W is supposed to be equal to 36. Is that okay? That's one condition that we have. A plus W is supposed to be 36. Okay, what else now? A costs $5 and W costs $3. The total amount that can be spent is 150. That means 5A plus 3W is less than or equal to 150. Now, we are looking for the minimum number of watercolor brushes she can buy. So we are only interested in the watercolor brushes. Can we convert this inequality to a form that only has W in it? We can input this there, right? So we can say this is A equal to 36 minus W. Put this there and you get 5 into 36 minus W plus 3W less than or equal to 150. Simplify this and you get 180 minus 5W plus 3W is less than or equal to 150. Minus 2W is less than or equal to minus 30. W is greater than or equal to 15. So what's the minimum number that we're looking for? 15. The number of watercolor brushes has to be greater than or equal to 15. Is that okay? So one of these was an equation. We used that to eliminate A from there. Yes. In this case, that will work because the answer is an integer. But what if it was not an integer? फिर आपको inequality वाली condition use करनी पड़ेगी. Equation will not give you the correct result necessarily. Like in the previous case, for instance, if you treated this as an equation instead, आपको मिलता x equal to 16.67. You would not know whether to round it off to 16 or 17. आप तो इसको 17 पे round off कर देते. Unless you have this less than sign, so you know कि 17 नहीं हो सकता, it has to be 16. अब यहाँ पे ये तो integer आ रहा है, but what if it was 15.1? Then the answer would be 16. Equation say you would think it's 15, which would be incorrect. Okay. Any problems? Okay, one last example in this. Again, have a look at this question. So there are two types of cakes, 2-tier and 3-tier. It takes her 20 minutes to decorate the first type and 35 minutes to decorate the second type. She needs to decorate at least 14 wedding cakes today. Okay, now if we call 2-tier cakes X and number of 3-tier cakes Y, what's the total number? X plus Y is at least 14. What does that mean? X plus Y is greater than or equal to 14. Is that okay? If X is the number of 2-tier cakes, if Y is the number of 3-tier cakes, X plus Y, they are saying, has to be at least 14. That's greater than or equal to 14. and she can spend no more than 6 hours doing so. The total amount of time is no more than six. How do you understand that? No more than six, less than or equal to six. The total amount of time. What's the total amount of time? 20 minutes for each two-tier wedding cake plus 35 minutes for each three-tier wedding cake. This number should be less than or equal to six. You can't write equal to six? Yes, you're right about that. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, you're right because the units are different. So we have to correct for that. 6 into 60, that is supposed to be 360. So you have to have consistent units. So you either convert everything to hours or minutes. So this is the inequality that you get, less than or equal to 360. What's the maximum number of three-tier wedding cakes she could decorate today? Now, is it possible to solve these two inequalities simultaneously? These are not equations that we could substitute y equal to something there or x equal to something there. It's not possible to solve them algebraically. At least it's not very straightforward to solve them algebraically. कर तो सकते हैं, but it's going to take too much effort. Now, this is where Desmos is extremely helpful. You can just input these two inequalities there, look at this, look at the graph and see कि क्या maximum value आपको वहाँ पे नजर आ रही है. What are we looking for? The maximum number of three-tier wedding cakes. That means what's the maximum value of y? That's what we want. Okay. Now let's try that. Let's input these two inequalities on Desmos and see what that gives us. X plus y is greater than or equal to 14. You can input them here directly. You don't have to make y even the subject. Desmos will handle everything for you. X plus y is greater than or equal to 14. This is one inequality. And the other one is 20x plus 35y. 20x plus 35y. That is less than or equal to 360. Is that okay? These are two inequalities that we're getting. What's the maximum value of y that you see here? Y means vertically, what's the maximum point that you have here? What's the overlapping part? This is the overlapping part, right? Is region mein, what's the maximum value of y? Can you spot that? You can just zoom in a bit and see what that value is. The point of intersection is 8.67 and 5.33. What's the maximum possible value of y then? 5. It has to be an integer, right? So 5.3 is the maximum value. The maximum integer is going to be 5. Yes. Desmos के बगैर हो सकता है. It is possible. It is possible. But that will require, let me try if that is going to work here. So what are we looking for? We're looking for the maximum possible value of y. So what you can try is from the first inequality, you can get x is greater than or equal to 14 minus y. Okay. Now in the second inequality, you can say 35y is less than or equal to 360 minus 20x, right? And then that gives you 35y less than or equal to, or in fact, let's make y the subject as well. Y less than or equal to 360 over 35 minus 20 over 35 times x. Now we want to find the maximum number of three-tier wedding cakes. X is something that is being subtracted. x minus kar rahe hain, x times something, we are subtracting. If we want to maximize this whole number, we want x to be as small as possible. Does that make sense? If you're subtracting two numbers, a minus b, if you want the result to be big, overall result to be big, you want b to be as small as possible, a to be as big as possible. So you want this part to be as small as possible. What's the smallest possible value of x? X is greater than or equal to 14 minus y. So least x would be 14 minus y. That's what you input there. X की जगह पे you input 360 over 35 minus 20 over 35 times 14 minus y. Solve this, make y the subject, and that should give you y less than or equal to 5.33 eventually, but that will require a lot of work. And then you say the maximum value is y equal to 5. Graph is much easier in this case. Isko directly solve karna is going to be too complicated.